This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us this evening for the learning of Teres Hashem Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. We begin B'Rishus Damar D'Asra of Landau with continued appreciation to all of you for coming and making this year possible. Thank you very much for waiting, as it took a little longer this evening, and thank you everybody that's helped. Tonight's shir is dedicated anonymously the Refuah Shalema for Sarah Malka Bas Chayasima, and in memory of Gittel Bas Tzvi and Zev Ben Yeshua, that the neshama should have an aliyah. They should be Melitza Yoshe for their family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. Tonight's shir is also sponsored anonymously in support of this shir and in honor of everybody that is learning by it. Tonight's shir is also sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Fisher, long-time subscribers in loving memory of Peril Bas Ruvain on her yahrzeit, and in honor of the 10th birthday of their daughter falls out in the Bubby's yahrzeit, in the honor of the 10th birthday of their daughter Rivka. May she they be zeichel legadla leben Torah lechuppah lemaisim tovim. We learn with the tefillah that all those that have been touched by the dread machla known as Yana Machla, other related diseases, should have a refuah shalema b'seich shachad Yisrael. I'm getting feedback, Mr. Simon. All those that have been touched by the dread machla known as Yana. Put his phone on mute. He's trying, obviously. And all those that have been touched by the dread machla known as Yana Machla, other related diseases, should have a refuah shalema b'seich shachal Yisrael. All of us and our loved ones should always be healthy. All those that are awaiting their shidduch should find their shidduch quickly and easily. All those that are awaiting children should be blessed with zarachaya v'kayama, healthy mommy and healthy baby. We should have parnasa b'revach v'chavod and lange gesunte zisa shalom bayis. Before I start tonight's shir on Behar, as for many of us, the period of mourning over the death of the Talmid Rabbi Akiva ends on Lag BaOmer, a period that's the longest period of mourning of the year. I wanted that we shouldn't go away without really absorbing the important lesson of this time of mourning. A mourning of not cutting our hair, not buying new things that we make a shechiyanu, not listening to music, remembering the death of the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. Now, you have to understand that not only was it a horrible death, it says they all died from Askara. Askara, the Gemara in Brachas says, is the worst death possible. Diphtheria, a skin growing on over the windpipe until it chokes people slowly to death. A horrible death. Not only was it that they were learning Torah, and the Gemara tells us that Torah is Megan Umatzlai. It defends and it saves. They also had an amazing Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva, who it's brought down that Moshe Rabbeinu only got to the 49th degree. But Rabbi Akiva, it says, that one of the pshatim, when Moshe Rabbeinu said, Shlach no b'yad tishlach, so one pshat is Shlach no b'yad tishlach, he meant Aaron, his older brother. But another pshat, Shlach no b'yad tishlach, is in the hands of Rabbi Akiva, because he saw that Rabbi Akiva would understand the 50th degree. And he said, therefore, why should you send them in my hand, where we have to get out exactly at midnight, otherwise they would sink to the 50th degree of Tumah, and I wouldn't be able to take them out. But Rabbi Akiva was in the 50th degree of Kedusha, would be able to take them out. So Rabbi Akiva, like the saying goes, had greis keiches, a lot of strength, and yet he couldn't save any of his 24,000 Talmidim. So what was the crime? Today, we don't have anybody that could tell us why the Holocaust happened. Excuse me, in the back of it. You want to see if you could lift it a little bit so I get a clearer picture? Don't touch any of the controls. Just come on this side and see what I'm talking about. You see? See what I'm talking about? It could be lifted a little bit. So for the Holocaust, thank you, perfect. Yeah, much better. Yeah. For the Holocaust, we have nobody that can tell us why it happened. We could think, we could speculate, but we have nobody to tell us. But then the Chachmei Gemara knew, and the Gemara Yevamos tells us, because they didn't give honor one to another. Now, first of all, you have to understand, what could trump the merit of Torah? What could trump the merit of Torah is not giving honor to Torah. They were all Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. They needed to give each other kavod Torah, and they didn't. And not giving kavod to Torah trumps limud Torah. Just like the Gemara says in Masechtas Megillah that kavod Torah is odef melimud Torah. Now this is true about equals. The Reb Kiva Talmidim, they were relatively equals, and yet they were so severely punished for not giving honor to one another. Imagine what would be if people don't give honor to Talmidei Chacham, to Rabbanim, to Rashi Yeshivas. The worst death, no protection, in the flower of their youth, way before their time, leaving the world bereft of Torah. That's one lesson. Another lesson is the fact that the Maharsha says that their sin was Lashon Hara, talking bad about other people. You can't talk bad about other people. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It says, Orur makereyeyu basasa, curse is somebody who hits his friend in secret. That's talking behind the person's back. A curse, horror. It says in Yerushalmi and Peah that the three most serious sins are Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shvichas Damim. And it says Lashon Hara Keneged Kulam is equal to all of them. Well, we have to tell our families, you're going to celebrate Lag BaOmer, the period of mourning is over. So what did you take away from this period of mourning? That it's highly dangerous. Of course it's dangerous to smoke. Last week we learned another danger of smoking. Young man fell asleep smoking and burnt to death. And I want you to know it's not the first time that I heard this story. In Staten Island, in my community, somebody had a tenant, and the tenant fell asleep while smoking, and the house burnt down. I was in the house. It looked like it was a house from the Warsaw Ghetto. It looked like a house that went through the Holocaust. But it's a fact that rather than talk Lashon Hara, take a whole pack of cigarettes and ram it into your mouth and smoke the whole pack. Cigarettes might kill you. And it only kills you in this world. But Lashon Hara kills you in this world and in the next world. And Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, 24,000 of them, I've said many times that the sin of Lashon Hara is the sin of Besser Mensch. It's the sin of the best of the mention. Because better people, what do? They're not gonna do a grubber sin. They're not gonna have a Domino's pizza. They're not gonna open the light on Shabbos. What are they gonna do? Oh, but you want to know what went on in Shul on Shabbos? You gotta hear this. And also because they feel more Muslim than other people, they feel more complete, they tend to look down critically at other people and talk about it. He talks in shul. She's not so careful with tznius. Yeah, you should see, he's a real harsh boss. He doesn't pay on time. This is all. We have such a long season of mourning to remind us that Jews simply don't talk about people. And we're talking about when it's true. We're not talking about if it's not true. That's Mitzvah Shema. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about when it's all true. But if there's no benefit from it, you're not like, you hear how that shul treats their rabbi. What are you talking about that for? It's true. So, and therefore what? Speaking Lashon Hara about a whole shul. For what purpose? Yeah, they weren't very good to the counselor. For why are you talking about it? Oh, I went to these people's houses. You should hear the screaming in the house. Not allowed to talk that way. It's simply not allowed to talk that way. Lashon Hara lamed hey, go to Gehenna the easy way. Talk about not giving honor to one another. We have to talk to our children. This is a good Pesach to talk to our children how to behave in the schoolyard. This is the parsha also of Vaynoas Devarim. It's allowed the Raisa to say hurtful words. You can't catch to save your life. Why do you want to be chosen in? To ruin the game for the rest of us? That's what you eat at recess? Boy, that looks icky. All kinds of stuff like this. It's like saying and if you do it in front of other people, and if they're not nice to one another, they're young, budding people that learn Torah, that's leinogu kavod zelazeh. Have to teach our children to be nice to one another in school. And that's the lesson of what happened to the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Behar Sinai. Hashem spoke to Moshe at Mount Sinai. So Rashi says, why Ma'in and Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai? Why specifically by the mitzvah of Shemitah does it say Har Sinai? All the mitzvahs were given at Har Sinai. Why does it specifically say by the mitzvah of Shemitah, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Behar Sinai? The famous Kash of Rashi, Ma'inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. So first you have the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer explains Rashi's answer. Now you have to know, before we say the answer, there are people today that are impacted by atheists and the reform, and they say, how do we know that the Torah is Misinai? That everything is Misinai? How do we know? Now, of course, we have a very strong feeling of Messiah. We have connected all the way, right? Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai, Messiah Yeshua, Yeshua L'Zakenim, L'Neviim, right? L'Neviim gave it to the Anshe Knesset Agdala, and the Anshe Knesset Agdala already brings us to Chagai Zechariah Malachi, and then we have all of the Chachmei HaMishnah and HaGemara, and then we have the Geonim. In Mamish, we have a solid chain back. We have a solid chain back from Sinai. We know that there has been Sidorim all over the world in houses where everybody said and passed over to their children all the way back, connected all the way back from Mitzrayim, that it was Aniva loy Malach, Aniva loy Shaliach. We have a Messiah. But the Chassam Sofer says something else. Rashi says over here, in answer to Ma Inyan Shemitah Eitzal Sinai, Rashi says, Ma Shemitah, just like Shemitah, Nemru Kloi Loiseh B'diktukeh Misinai, its general principles and its most minutest laws were given by Hashem at Sinai. Af Kulan, also all Taryag mitzvahs, Nemru Klaloiseyem B'diktus Heyem Misinai. Every minute and general principle is set from Sinai. Ask the Chassam Sofer, why was Shemitah used as the model? So the Chassam Sofer says, a farmer usually every few years, like the Gemara tells us in Bava Basra, every few years gives the land a break, leaves it fallow, and that way the next year it recharges its batteries and it flourishes. That's the way. And they used to stagger. They used to use one field fallow one year, another field fallow the other year. It has to do with Bava Basra, because in Bava Basra it talks about Cheskas Gimel Shanim, a presumptive status, that you have to have the field 3 years without the previous owner protesting. It has to be 3 consecutive years. But if he left it fallow a year, because that was the custom to leave it fallow to recharge its batteries, that doesn't disturb the consecutive chazakah. Okay. It says the Chassam Sofer here, the farmer does just the opposite. He plants it 6 consecutive years, draining the field of all of its strength. And then Hashem says, if you leave it fallow on the 7th year, the 6th year, I will make a bumper crop enough for 3 years. The 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. Until the 8th year grows. But what do you mean? How could that be? You just drained the field, and now at the end, when it's all drained, then it's going to have a bumper crop? No one can say that and risk that except the divine. Of course, even when they left the land fallow, they didn't leave all the land fallow. No country, no nation would everybody, agricultural economy, and everyone takes off. There's no crops at all. And Hashem says, don't worry. That could only be divine. And that's the Indian Shemitah Eitzal Sinai. Just like we see that Shemitah obviously was only able to be mandated by the Borei Olam, by the one that's in control. So also all of the Torah was given by the one up high. By the way, we have other such proofs. I'll mention one other one, and that's the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel. The mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel is that every man should leave his home and go Aliyah L'Regel. Now that means everyone. It doesn't say you should leave the army home to protect the land. No, leave, and you leave the women. The women don't have a mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel, and the children don't have a mitzvah. The men should go. Leave the women, the children, the elderly home, surrounded by enemies, and don't worry, nothing will happen to them. In our history, there's never recorded one incident that Klal Yisrael went to Aliyah L'Regel and we were attacked by our enemies. Who could give such a command? Only the Borei Olam. In modern times, when everybody was in Shul on Yom Kippur, we were attacked. That's the Yom Kippur War. But when following the divine command, when there's a Beis Hamikdash, and Hashem Shechina is Shaira, and Hashem says, come on the Moed is a vad, a meeting. Come on the Moed and make Aliyah L'Regel and you won't lose out. Who could say that but the divine? Now also, Ma Inyan Shmita Eitzel Har Sinai. The Chidah says a very important thing. He says it's in his Sefer Nachal Kedumin. In his Sefer Nachal Kedumin, the Chidah says that the Gemara in Brachas Daf Lamed Hey Amid Beis tells us that Rava said to the Rabbanon, Lo techezu apoi beyumei Nisan u beyumei Tishrei. Don't appear before me in the month of Nisan and the month of Tishrei. Why? Kidei sheyis asku oz bekatzer u bebatzer. Because I'm going to be engaged in 1 month in the harvesting and 1 month in the vintaging of the grapes. So as an agricultural community, says the Chidah, 2 months of the year we couldn't learn Torah at all. 1 month we were involved in harvesting, and 1 month we were involved in vintaging. Says the Nachal Kedumah, after 6 years, 6 times 2 is 12. That's 12 months of no Torah. And therefore, every 6 years we're given a Shemitah year of 12 months to make up for those 12 months. That's the Nachal Kedumah. And the Mishcha Shemen says it fits in very well why it says that Loi Sadcha Loi Sizra and Karmacha Loi Sizmar. Because there was 1 month of the Ketzira, the harvest, and 1 month of the vintaging. And therefore, 2 solid months with no learning, times 6 is 12, we need to have a sabbatical where we don't work to make up for those 12 months of time. So what the Chidah is saying is the entire Mesiras Nefesh of Shemitah. Well, let's I mean, here in Chutz La'aretz, we don't have a parallel of this. So Hashem says for 1 year, don't work. And you have to understand what this means. It's just absolutely remarkable. The big farmers in Eretz Yisrael, they have heavy equipment that they lease for 30 years or for 10 years. And they have to continue paying their lease on their heavy equipment during the Shemitah year. And these big farmers, they bid heavily and finally win a client like Costco or whatever it is. And then they say, sorry, this year we can't fulfill our quota. See ya! See ya! We'll never come back to you, you Meshugana. Maybe this year you're not giving us. Or they work hard to break in an entire group of Arabs that do the work for them, or even whatever. And they train them for 6 years. And they tell them, sorry, this year no work. Goodbye. And those trained hands go to their competitors. You have an idea of the Nisayan of Shemitah? And now we're learning that the whole purpose of this is because Hashem wants us to know. You know, Ki lekach noitzarta, you were created to learn Torah. Right? A world, Bereshis bara Elikim, Bishvil Torah shenikar reishis, Vayer vayivoke yoim hashishi, because of the sixth day of the Sivan HaShishi, because of Chamisha Chumshei Torah. That's why I created the world. And you go 2 months of the year without Torah, so you got to take a sabbatical to make up all that time that you didn't learn Torah. Now this Nisayan of Shemitah, is mamish to sharpen our bitachon in Hashem. You have to be a big Baal bitachon. Not to work your field an entire year, to let go of all of your workers. Not to draw a paycheck 52 weeks. You have to be a big Baal bitachon. And that's why in this week's parasha is also the lav of Al tikach me'itoy neshech v'tarbis, not to take ribbis. And there's a fascinating klayakar. The klayakar says, why is there a lav not to take ribbis? The klayakar says, because a person that takes ribbis doesn't need bitachon. His money comes in a fixed amount, and he gave a loan to 60 people. And from each of the 60 people, he's getting a check with interest. It's coming in like clockwork. Doesn't need bitachon. As a matter of fact, the Klayakar says that's why you're allowed to take ribbis from a guy. Because a guy doesn't pay a lot of the times. So there you need bitachon. He says the idea of ribbis is that a person shouldn't live without needing bitachon. And I think that's why the lav of ribbis is in this week's parsha. Because it works in tandem with Shemitah. Because Shemitah is all about being a big Baal bitachon. It says, we don't realize because many of us are not big businessmen, so we don't have even the temptation to lend money with interest. But if you read in the Medrash and in the Gemaras what it says about people that give loans with interest, it's frightening. Let me read you a few things. It says in Bava Metzia, "Amalvam beribis nechasav mismoitetin la'olam." Somebody that gives loan, taking interest, takes usury, such a person, his estate will totter and disappear forever. Shmais Rabbah, Misha noitel ribis, somebody who takes interest, Malo lavakosav ki'ilu asa kol harois va'averish ba'olam. It's considered like he did every wicked thing in the world. Torah is really, really severe about ribis. And then we have the very scary Gemara, V'chai lo yisichya. He surely will not live. And it says in Yalkut Shemayim, Mishachai beribis ba'olam hazeh, if somebody lives in ribis in this world, lo yichya ba'olam haba, he'll lose his olam haba. You have the very famous Maisa, some of you probably heard this Maisa, very famous Maisa, Rabbi Kiva Eger in poison. What happened was a famous miser passed away. He was a miser, a kamsen, and he made his living with ribis. They came to the Chevra Kadisha, and under the advice of the Rav, Rabbi Kiva Eger, they charged the family 10 times the amount of a regular grave. Let's say a regular grave was $30,000, 30,000 ruble. They charged him 300,000 ruble. So the family immediately went to the secular court and summoned Rabbi Akiva Eger to Mishpah. What is this? Gouging, price gouging. So he was brought before the magistrate. Rabbi Akiva Eger was known all over the world, even by the Goyim, to be a very great person. And he told the judge, let me explain to you, according to our belief system, a person gets resurrected. So most people, when they buy a grave, it's only for a few hundred years till we believe the resurrection will come. But But a person that gives money and interest will not come up with a resurrection. So he's buying the grave forever. That's a lot more time. We charge a lot more for that. And it's known that the magistrate said it's your laws, your beliefs, you have a right to do that. You have a right to do that. Shows a long-term storage for a malva beribbis. So Ben Ish Chai says, why should a person lose his afterlife? I mean, he's a crook. It's a white-collar crime, maybe. But why should he lose his afterlife for ribbis? Interesting question. Well, we know there's certain things you lose your afterlife. You don't believe in the resurrection. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, you don't believe it, you don't get it. Right? That's what it says. So you ain't lechelik lo'olam haba, and it says in Sanhedrin in the last parak, because b'midah shada made in lie. If you don't believe in it, you won't get it. That's why we make it clear every day, 3 times a day. We believe in the resurrection. We want to get it. We want to get up. Like we said earlier, you embarrass somebody in public. But why, if you lend money and interest, I mean, if you steal, you don't lose your olam haba. Even if you murder, you don't lose your olam haba. What's lending money and interest? You don't have olam haba. So the great Ben Ish Chai says a mashal. Says mashal ma'adav. What could this be compared to? It could be compared to a king. There's a very, very, very interesting mashal. Excuse me. Well, it wasn't the Ben Ish Chai. It was the Ben Yoyada. Also the Ben Ish Chai, but it's not in the Ben Ish Chai in the drushes. It's in the Ben Yoyada. So he says that a mashal, there was a craftsman who was a refiner of gold. And he was bragging to somebody. He says, I have blessed hands. I'm always making money. The whole day. Even while I'm chewing my food, I'm busy. And in the night until I fall asleep, every moment. So the person he's talking to scoffed at him. He said, that's nothing. Do you make money while you're in the bathroom? What about Shabbos? What about when you're sleeping? And what about on Yom Kippur? He says, I make money when I'm sleeping. And I'm a Shem Shabbos. I fast in Yom Kippur. But I make money in Shabbos and Yom Kippur. I make money when I'm in the bathtub. He says, what do you do? He says, I lend money with ribbis. And the clock is moving even on Yom Kippur. Even on Shabbos. Says the Ben Yoyada. Remember the famous Gemara? When Hashem will come and say, Banecha chatu, your children sin. And Avram will say, okay, then they should die al Kiddush Hashem. And they go to Yaakov. Hashem says, let me go to Yaakov who had Tzagil Ubanim. He said, look, what could I do if they sin? Yamusu. Let them die. They went to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak said, wait a second, Hashem. They're only my children, they're not your children. So how many years are they? 70 years. First 20, they don't get punished. They don't get punished. So there's 50 left. Half of the 50, by the time they get awake and everything, half of the 50 is they're sleeping. They're not sitting while they're sleeping. There's left 25. 12 and a half of that time, they're eating, they're drinking, they're going to the bathroom. What's left? 12 and a half hours. Look, I'll split it with you. And if you you don't want to split it, I'll take it all upon myself. Did I already offer my life to you? Bottom line is that a big part of our life we're not sinning because we're busy. But anshe damim umirma lo yachatzu yameim. But people of deceit, their days won't be halved because they're sinning when they're sleeping. They're sinning all the time. Ooh, you sin all the time. It's a very, very scary business. V'shaftem al ha'oretz levetach. Now I'm going to tell you a very great Torah principle. Listen carefully. It's a very great Torah principle. V'shaftem al ha'oretz levetach. Rashi says that if you keep Shemitah, you will dwell on the land securely. Sheba'avoin Shemitah Yisrael goyim. Because for the sin of Shemitah, for not keeping Shemitah, Klal Yisrael is exiled from the land. So there is, in the 5th parak of Pirkei Avos, there is a Mishnah that needs a lot of study. It's one of those Mishnahs, you don't spend a lot, it's already the 5th parak. You don't spend a lot of time on this Mishnah, but it's a very unusual mitzvah. It says, Golus Ba'laylam, exile comes to the world, Al Gila Arayis, for immorality, Shvichus Damim, bloodshed, Avodah Zarah, V'al Hashmot HaSaretz, and for not keeping Shemitah. So everybody asks, it doesn't seem to be that not keeping Shemitah fits with the other three. The other three are the cardinal sins of Judaism that you even have to give your life for, right? Idolatry, immorality, that's like adultery, and bloodshed, murder. And then there's Shemitah? I mean... So the Yalkut Yosef says an incredible pshat, introducing us, one of the greatest Musar Svarim that we have, that's learned in yeshivas all over the world. All over the world. It's one of the most accepted Svarim of Jewish philosophy and ethics. It's the Chovos HaLevavos. The Chovos HaLevavos in Shar Avodas Elikim Perek Beis. It's Kedai to come, just to hear this. In Shar Avodas Elikim Perek Beis, the Chovos HaLevavos says as follows. We see it by ourselves, that many times our Yetzer Hara is stronger than our Yetzer Tov. Our evil inclination is stronger than the good inclination. We see it. We see it gets us, stay in bed a little while longer, daven at home buying kaisel, take it easy. Listen, you could lose your calm a little bit. It's only schmoozing. Everybody talks in shul. The Yetzer Hara seems to be a lot stronger than the Yetzer Tov. He gets the better of us. A lot of times, it's hot outside now. The Goyish women are shedding their clothes, and person takes a look, another look. The Yetzer Tov seems to lose the battle a lot of times. So it's so interesting. The Chovos HaLevavos says why. He says a fascinating thing. He says, what's the mazayin of the Yetzer Tov? The food of the Yetzer Tov is mitzvahs and ma'asim tov. The mitzvahs and ma'asim tov that we do leave a lot to be desired. Yeah, we daven, we make brachas, people comes late, they rush out early, they keep it up aim, we give a shmek here, a shmek there, I gotta go. Why didn't you call me? Oh, you always want me to call. A lot of our mitzvahs are lacking, they're not so healthy. On the other hand, the food that we give the Yetzer Hara, the food that's gashmi, is grilled to perfection. I don't just want medium, I want medium rare. Which wine? I want a semi-dry, make it a dry, mixed with a third of semi-dry. Make it red, and make it 2 years old. and let the bottle breathe first. You know, all of our Mozen Gashmi is grilled to perfection. So he says, of course the Yetzer Hara is stronger than the Yetzer Tov. The food that we give to the Yetzer Tov is half-baked, and the food that we give to the Yetzer Hara is grilled to perfection. So he says that it's brought down in the Sfarim HaKadoshim that when we keep Shemitah, the Kedushas HaOretz causes that the food should feed the Yetzer Tov too. And then our Yetzer Hara is not able to overpower the Yetzer Tov. But if we don't keep the Shemitah, then the Yetzer Hara is able to overpower the Yetzer Tov. And then we have the other sins of Gila Haroyis, Avodah Zarah, and Shvichas Dam. Now this is what the Yalkut Yosef says. But I think in this discussion is an important insight into life in general. Because Rechavis Avavos is telling us that the reason why we find that the famous Gemara in Brachos, the beginning of Brachos, Yo'elam Yirgaz Adam Yetzer Tov Al Yetzer Hara. Person should always incite, agitate the Yetzer Tov against the Yetzer Hara. It should be a battle royal. And the Chavis Avavos says the reason why we lose so often is because the Yetzer Hara is healthy and robust. The Yetzer Hara is, has a lot of vitality. There's a lot of vitality. Amen. The Yetzer Hara has a lot of vitality, and the Yetzer Tov is not well fed. And therefore, we have to know that if we change that balance, for example, if we eat on Shabbos, like Kedusha Shabbos, and think about Zeichel Ma'aseh Bereishis, and that we believe in the Creator, if we eat and we make a proper bracha beforehand, and we bench properly afterwards, then we're feeding the Yetzer Tov. Especially when it comes to our learning, if we learn and we think before our learning, I want to be mekayim the mitzvah deraisa v'dibar tabam la'asais nachas ruach liyotzreinu. Then the maisim toivim, especially Torah, which is the antidote to the Yetzer Hara, then the Yetzer Tov gets a strength to deal with the Yetzer Hara. And similarly, we said that the food is feeding the Yetzer Hara. But if we eat the food properly, there's a person who drinks a coffee. Now he has a latte before davening. But he thinks, I want to do it so that my mind should be clear for davening. That's not feeding the Yetzer Hara. That's feeding the Yetzer Tov. A mother who eats a good meal, that she should have the strength for the baby, the patience for her husband. That's feeding the Yetzer Tov, not the Yetzer Hara. It shifts the balance, because that's the milchama of the world. Ki tzeitzei l'milchama aleivecha, says Chaim HaKadosh, that's the oyev ha'amiti. Everybody has an oyev. It's the Yetzer Hara. It's that battle, right? And Yetzer Hara is mevakesh lamisa. He wants to kill us. If your brother is poor, and your hand is poor with him, you should be machzik him. You should strengthen him. So what does it mean, umata yada imach? So some people want to translate it, umata yada means you incline your hand. But umata yada imach says the Ben Ish Chai, and here the Ben Ish Chai gives a mashal to a king who had an only son, the crown prince. The crown prince has to be taught the tachsisei melucha. Even by the Goyim, they had royalty. And like in England, you see the Queen of England, she has certain ways of acting, certain royal ways of acting. There's tachsisei melucha. So the king sent his son to one of the masters of royal etiquette to teach him, and also the court behavior and other necessities of royalty. He sent him to this expert, and this expert taught him for several years. And the crown prince came home, and the king gave him a test, and he was very pleased with the wise man, and he sent him 100,000 golden coins. That's what the Ben Ish Chai says. Meya elef zehuvim, 100,000 golden coins, and he gave him a symbol of recognition in the royal court. So the Chacham said, I have one more lesson to teach him. I need you to send him to me for 1 more hour. So the king said, of course. He sent him over by royal chariot in the afternoon, and the Chacham locked the door, took out a whip, beat him 50 times, gave him 50 lashes, and sent him back home bleeding and almost unconscious. The king flew into a rage. Kings are they're fickle. The king flew into a rage and said, immediately hang him, but I'll allow him 10 minutes to give an explanation of his terrible behavior. So the Chacham came in calmly and said to the king, I almost gave him his full education, but as a king, he will have to be the final say on judgment. Some people should get 10 lashes, some people will get 20 lashes, some people will get 30 lashes. How will he know what does it mean, a difference between 10, 20, 30, in order to give fair judgment? He has to feel it. I let him feel it, and now he could be a fair judge. And of course the king apologized, and it found tremendous favor in his eyes, and he thanked him. Says the Ben Ish Chai, that's the meaning of Chiyamach Achicha, Umata Yoda Imach, and you feel his poverty. Says the Ben Ish Chai, how could a person feel somebody else's hunger? Today, who goes hungry? Many times I said this in the shir, that I spent 17 years in Dishna's bungalow colony, and then when they sold to Scalia, we were out a colony. The next year we went to Sun Circle. I'm there, Baruch Hashem, already 19 years in Sun Circle. But for 1 year we were in Gullus, and we went to a colony called Village Green in Swan Lake. And in that colony, we were together at that time with Rabbi Yosef Friedenson, Olav Shalom, he was there. And there was a Rav Lichtig from Queens, who told me that he used to go to Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, and he met the Chofetz Chaim more than once. It was a big schiyah to be together with him for the summer. And he said to me, Rav Moshe Meir, do you know what were the biggest challenges, the 2 biggest challenges of my youth? And I said to him, what? He said, the hatred of the Goyim and the intense poverty. He said, if we went the wrong block out of the Jew quarter, the Goyim would come after us, the Goyish children would come after us, and they wouldn't throw rocks. Rocks are for kids. They would throw glass, and they would throw at our eyes. That's the hatred. And he says, you know what poverty means? Poverty means that I remember as a child going to sleep and not being able to sleep because of hunger pangs. My parents did not have any food to give me. So after a long day of cheder, I went to sleep and I couldn't sleep because I had hunger pangs. We don't even know what that means. We don't even know what that means. So we say in benching, we thank Hashem b'chol eis and b'chol shah. The food that He gives us b'chol eis, you know what b'chol eis means? That He gives us seasonal food. Get a hot soup and hot cocoa in the winter, and soda on the rocks in the summer. And it's b'chol shah. At any time we could open the refrigerator. You get up in the night, you're thirsty, you open the refrigerator. Whenever you're hungry, you go to the cupboard. We always have food. So it's very hard to relate to a poor man that doesn't have food. Somebody that goes into the store and doesn't have to hesitate to go into the store because they're going to yell at them about the size of the bill, has a hard time relating to people who are embarrassed to go into a store, into many stores, because they owe so much money. People who can't sleep because they're afraid they're going to lose their house next month. They're in foreclosure. People who are frightened that they're going to throw their children out of school because they're so behind in tuition. So says, Umata Yada Yimach. Says the Ben Ishchai, that's why Hashem gave us a Yom Kippur. That we go 25 hours without eating. And we remember what it means to be hungry. So we should feel what it means that the poor man is hungry. Doesn't have food at home. The truth of the matter is that this empathy, one of the 48 Kinyanei HaTorah, one of the 48 Kinyanei HaTorah is Noisei Ba'ol Im Chaveiroi, feeling the plight of someone else. That's empathy. Empathy means that we should try to understand what it means, someone who has no children. And a woman desperately wants a child. And a father desperately wants a Kaddish. And how Simchas Torah is so painful because everybody's coming with their children. And everybody's going under the talus with their grandchildren by Kol Naharim. Or the pain of a divorced man who's living alone in his basement and doesn't have anybody at the table. And people aren't inviting him. Or a divorced woman who went out with a bunch of shidduchim and is not finding her shidduch and is wondering if she'll ever be happy. And then what about the thousands of singles? Thousands of singles. They go to sleep crying in their pillows, wondering if they'll ever get married. And why their friends are already having children that are being bar mitzvahed. And they're talking all about the children going to high school. And they didn't even start living. And then you see somebody who lost his job and is so down on himself because he feels he lost his identity. And he's so frightened every month without a medical policy, without being able to pay the rent. We have to learn how to feel for people. It's so important. What about the house that there's no peace in? We said last week that we say in Kaddish Shalom Rabim and Shemaya v'Chayim Aleinu. We say Shalom first because without Shalom there's no Chayim. I mean Shalom ain't klum. There are houses where there's people to go home and they don't have somebody loving waiting for them. They're going into a war zone. Oh, we have to at least daven for people like that. In Sim Shalom, in Shalom Rav, there should be a turnaround. We have to learn empathy. says the Ben Ish Chai, that's a mata yoda yimach. You have to feel poor with him. Ki avodai heim. I want to tell you two mices from the Behar Nafshi. I didn't really say any stories tonight. I didn't say any stories. Behar Nafshi tells about that he was by a Sheva Brachas. You know, Sheva Brachas is in the house with the family. It was actually by the Kala's parents, and they had a minyan. So after Shalosh Hodas, the obvious thing was V'huracham. All of a sudden, the Kala's little brother, 50-year-old brother, says, "I'm sorry, but I can't daven here in the house." They look at him in surprise. Why not? He says, "I learned in yeshiva that it's better to daven in shul." It says the Gemara in Brachos, says, "B'makom rina sham tefila." He says, I remember I was in camp yeshiva, and we came back from a trip, and they wanted to daven in the bunk. And I said, "No, we learned that we should go," and I convinced everybody to go all the way down to the basic classes. So I don't think it's right. So the Chassan's father said, "I have a big meeting tonight. I'm in a rush. It's going to take time to walk to shul." So the young boy walked over to him and he said, "I'm a young boy, but I think it's more important the meeting with Hashem of Marav than your meeting later on." And he one day, a little boy, "Avadai hey, you are my avodim." He brings out another Maisa I thought was very scary. To me, I thought this Maisa was very scary. I want to say before I continue, I'm very gratified the reaction the last 2 weeks with sponsorships. But again, I want to remind you, next week again we don't have a sponsor. And this year reaches so many people. We were looking for a sponsor for next week. It's $360 to sponsor this year. I'm just looking at Facebook now live. We just have a thank you from Manchester, England. And people watch from Efrat in Eretz Yisrael, TorahAnytime.com, and Kol HaLashon, and eventually on Torah Communications Network. Share is heard all over the world. It's a very cheap sponsorship of $360. $360 to sponsor all over the world. 718-916-3100. rmmwsi@aol.com. So Rav Zilberstein tells a story in the Behar Nafshi. It's really a scary story. That somebody, without thinking, put up a sign in the front of the shul that everybody is invited in the morning to the bris milah. There was a big Talmid Chacham in the shul who he was very makpid on his learning time, and he was troubled that if people invite you to a bris, you have to go. You're not supposed to invite. You're supposed to inform people there's a bris, but to invite, the Yanavi is there. So he said to himself, "Yeah, but that's only if you do it b'peh, but b'ksav, it's not that way." But he wasn't sure. So he went to ask the Chazon Ish, if he has to go to the bris. So the Chazon Ish laughed, and the Chazon Ish said, "Anyway, you don't have to go. It says, Talmidei Chachamim ein yoshvim im suda ba'anoshim she'eina mulgan." A Talmid Chacham doesn't have to sit in a meal with people that are not proper. So the man said, "What do you mean? If everybody there is Bnei Yeshiva?" So the Chazon Ish said it's almost impossible that everybody does Netilas Yadayim correctly. And if they don't do Netilas Yadayim correctly, they're not Anoshim Mehugana. They're not proper people. So anyway, you don't have to go. Avadayim. You have to be careful. We have to get up in the morning. People touch the taps. They go wash their hands to the knuckles. They're not careful. To be careful with all the details of the Torah. I'm going to conclude with a story about the great Rav Kahneman. The great, great, great Rav Kahneman. This story happened that somebody was on a bus and he meets this old man, and he was a grandson of Rav Diskin. The old man recognizes him and he says, "You're a grandson of Rav Diskin, right? Used to be Rav in Pardes Chana, right?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I'm a shaykhid from Chadeira. I want to tell you a ma'isa. Rav Kahneman had this minig that when he collected for Panovich, he didn't just go to rich people. He went to every house, even the house of a plain pasha to balabas that has no money. When they asked him why he doesn't target rich people, he says, "I'm not just collecting for Panovich. After the Holocaust, I'm letting everybody know about how important Torah is and to have a big Torah yeshiva. And that there's loisi shachach mepizaro, there's still a big yeshiva in Klal Yisrael. I'm letting everybody know." So one day, he made it to this small little shack and came collecting, and the man heard that there's a big yeshiva, as a Holocaust survivor. He started crying. And Rav Kahneman asked him if he could help. He started crying even more. He said, "I'm a poor farmer, and just yesterday my horse died. I have no idea how I'm going to make a parnas." But he took out a small little coin and he gave it to Rav Kahneman. Rav Kahneman came back, and as busy as he was, he sent a letter to Rav Diskin in Pardes Chana that when somebody comes from this neighborhood, he gave him the address, he should send 5 lirot to this man so he could be able to get a horse. And the man that he sent with the money was this shaykhid from Chadeira. And he kept the little slip, the letter, to show that as busy as Rav Kahneman was in raising money for Panovich, he still thought about each and every individual on his route. That's where gesagt dabei. When we celebrate on Lag BaOmer, we'll say, what's there to celebrate? Everybody is dead. So first of all, you should know that it's very possible that after taking away the best, everybody else might have started to die. Croup was infectious. But Hashem accepted the carbon of the 24,000 Talmidim, and miraculously nobody else who had lesser zuchusim died. But there's something else. We celebrate the 5 great Talmidim, that from those 5 people, Reb Meir and his colleagues, we have Torah today. From just 5 people. The last Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, he went to the south. And that's what we celebrate. The great miracle that everything that we have today is because 24,000 died, but 5 left. 5 survived. And from that Torah flourished. And never think, who am I? The power of just a few people can make an extraordinary difference.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.